I guess we'll do it all in one go here and then go through the cruiser skills and give people heads up on what's going on there and what to take and what not to take. I guess starting off with gunner, this is, again, pretty helpful for a lot of those cruisers that have poor turret traverse. A lot of battle cruisers will be using this, so your Stalingrads and that kind of stuff. Pretty straightforward. Having this at 1 point instead of 2 points is actually a pretty nice change and a pretty big buff. So the next one is the torpedo armament engineer that increases your torpedo speed. Personally would not recommend this on anything. Even the cruisers that have torpedoes, you're really not going to see a lot of benefit out of this. You have consumable specialist, and what I'm noticing here with this specialist thing is they do not say radar. And on top of this, this is really focused. They don't say hydroacoustic search either.
Fighter, spotting, defensive, main, battery reload, torpedo reload.
Okay, so from looking at this seems pretty worthless on the surface level, just because they don't include two of the most commonly used cruiser consumables, which will be hydroacoustic search to counter DDs and radar. Loader's pretty good depending on the ship. If you find yourself changing ammunition types quite often, it's good. It's good. Alarming is the renamed incoming fire alert skill that we've talked about earlier. It's pretty helpful on cruisers, especially for dodging BB salvos, because it'll let you know when you're getting shot at, and as a 1 point skill, it's very strong. So the last one in the category is propulsive, and this is something that's going to be valuable on specific ships. So I'm thinking Colbert, your Atlantas, the really lightly armored cruisers, maybe Smolensk, and the lightly armored cruisers that will lose their engines or steerings. So Pyrotechnist, really good skill. It's basically demolition expert made weaker and for less points. Most cruisers that are very HE dependent, you're going to want to take this. This will be like your IGN lines, even the German lines where you would think that the Hindenburg, your runes, Hipper, I mean, you name it. It's all around just a really helpful skill to have. Torpedo armament expert.
No.
The only thing you'd run this on is Minotaur.
Yeah.
And that's because Minotaur doesn't really require that many points. Consumables expert, action time of hydroacoustic search, surveillance radar, smoke generator, engine boost. This skill is going to be extremely strong. In terms specifically for ships with radar or smoke generator. So that consumables expert will be very, very powerful. It'll also be very good on specific individual ships, like any kind of cruiser with a smoke screen could benefit to an extent from this. Spotting aircraft expert.
This would be good for a Hindenburg, specifically. As long as you don't go for these two for the Hindenburg, go strictly for the spotting expert, I think it'd be fine.
It's pretty helpful, like you said there with that Hindenburg example. It can be pretty helpful in certain circumstances. Argoside, I kind of already went over this. This is priority target in the current model. Again, very, very important, like one of the basic no-brainer skills to take usually. This, it's at 2 points now instead of 1. The effect, it gives you a lot of information on who's on the flank, who's aiming at you. It's very, very important to keep yourself alive in cruisers of all tiers. And any type of cruiser, it doesn't really matter. Last one in this category is, I guess, this AA Gunner's Training Expert. Continuous damage in the priority sector.
Maybe a Minotaur, maybe?
This has very niche usage, and again, with the way AA mechanics works, I'll spare you another explanation, but most of the time, most CV planes will not be loitering in the continuous AA damage sector, or in the range where you have the most continuous damage for anti-aircraft. So this skill is pretty dubious as to whether or not it's worth it without some major overhauls. The surface ship CV interaction.
Demo Man.
So this is the maximum damage and the detectability of a ship with main battery guns with a caliber higher than 149. Your detectability goes up by 15%. That is brutal. So this is buffing the HE and SAP. It's not like a huge thing, but it's still significant. The thing that I would kind of keep an eye on here is this detectability range of a ship with main battery guns with a caliber higher than 149, up plus 15%. You are going to get shot at if you're running this a lot. Torpedo demolition expert, 15% damage is pretty big. Thing is, how often are you landing torpedoes with your cruisers? Not as often as you would be in DDs or other things. It's really not worth it, especially because there's probably better stuff you could be taking for 3 points. Adrenaline Rush, same kind of deal. This is a very strong skill that kind of scales over time as you take more damage. It's still really good despite the fact they made it cost 3 points instead of 2. It's still outstanding. Armor Piercing Cruiser, maximum damage of AP shells with a caliber of 190 millimeters and above gets a 7% buff. This will be very strong on armor piercing oriented battle cruisers like Stalingrad, Petro, things like that, Moskva. Provident, that's Superintendent. One thing to be very aware of with cruisers, Superintendent's probably one of the most important things to take on high tier cruisers, tier 9 and 10, because they have the heal, and you will likely use all 4 heals when you're taking Superintendent over the course of a game. It is really, really important. Enduring, this skill is kind of, it's not worth it on a good amount of cruisers. There are only a few cruisers that really would use this, like your Des Moines class cruisers, so DM, Salem, Minotaur, Zao, because it has such a low HP pool. Straight A Artillerist, which is reducing the main battery reload time when an enemy ship is detected within the base detectability of a ship. So this is kind of when, if you're someone that likes brawling, I think it's persistent over time. So this is just a 8% reload buff. And the secondary buff is irrelevant. You're not really going to get a lot of usage out of your secondaries in a cruiser. I mean, this is a nice thing to have. For 4 points, it's pretty strong. Like, I can see this being very effective on some, like the tankier cruisers or cruisers with high DPM, like a Des Moines. The other thing here is going to be Brawler, which is the activated effect is it increases the ship. I'm going to just read into what it actually does. Your speed gets quicker and your dispersion gets 10% better when more enemy ships are visible than ally ships within your base main caliber firing range. So one thing to consider when you're looking at this Brawler skill is that it requires there to be more visible enemy ships than ally ships. And if I'm really reading into it, putting on like kind of like the lawyer hat or whatever,
that's
true. More visible enemy ships.
Yep, more
which means ships that are detected. Intelligence Radio Technician, this is RPF on live servers. I've already gone over this a little bit with the DDs. It's very helpful for information. It's very useful for ranked and competitive. It is something that you'd take on certain ships, likely going to be your Minotaurs and your Venezias, since they are less point demanding. It is pretty expensive though, so be aware of that. Mm-hmm. And overall, it's a helpful skill. It's all right. It's not anything like amazingly incredible unless you have a specific reason for why you're taking it. Threshing, this is IFHE, as you currently know it. Mm-hmm. This will depend on the ship that you're playing. This would be helpful primarily on light cruisers. It's really strong. It's kind of necessary, unfortunately, for dealing damage in the light cruisers. And you have to make your own individual determination whether you want to give up that fire chance or not. One thing to keep in mind with threshing is that a lot of the way that they reworked IFHE, they gave some light cruisers like Nevsky the ability to penetrate 30 millimeters. They kind of upped their penetration thresholds a little bit to where a lot of the same tier cruisers you can still pen without having to use threshing, so you don't lose out on that fire chance. So just something to keep in mind. Concealment Expert, this is like, if you think about it, the main thing that's going to kill you in a cruiser is going to be a battleship, another cruiser, or a carrier. This helps against all of that. You're just hurting yourself if you don't take this. There's nothing else really to be said on Concealment Expert for cruisers. AA Gunner. This is something where maybe in concert with that 2-point skill, a gunner's training expert could
Yeah, what we just talked about
potentially
earlier.
do some things with certain ships, but again, very expensive to spec into. And with the A system being the way it is, it remains to be seen on how effective this stuff will actually be. We'll see. Who knows? But I don't really have high hopes for it. And that's pretty much it.
Hey guys, thanks for watching today's video. If you enjoy this kind of content, make sure to like and leave a comment down below. I always love reading your guys' comments. It's greatly appreciated. Blah!